All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session that we've titled Western Abroad 101. My name is Dr. Ryan Larsen. I'm the director of the Education Abroad office here at Western Washington University. Well, here in my dining room at the moment, but usually at Western Washington University. I'm on this webinar with Hannah Nevitt. Hannah is an education abroad advisor. I just gave you an officer title, Hannah. You have to start carrying a gun, okay? Just kidding. Hannah Nevitt is one of our study abroad advisors or education abroad advisors. Hannah studied in Rome as a student. I studied in Central America for a year. I also used to live in Japan as a child, and I worked at a university in Spain. I have traveled on every continent except for Antarctica. So I've got one more to go. And so Hannah and I and our other two advisors on staff, we love to travel. We've studied abroad. And if this is something that interests you, we can definitely help you do it. So today's session is called, like I said, Western Abroad 101. We're recording the session, as I mentioned, as people were coming into the waiting room, so that students who couldn't attend today's session can watch it on their own later. And so we've disabled cameras and audio to protect everybody's privacy. So I'm going to go ahead and get this presentation started. We're going to have the chat box open the entire time so that you can ask any questions you might have as we go. And then we'll save some time for questions at the end. As we go through each section, if you have a question about that section or that slide, go ahead and type it in, and Hannah will be monitoring questions. And then as I finish every 2 or 3 slides, I'll check in with Hannah, and she'll chime in with a few questions you might have as we're moving through the presentation. What we'll cover today are these topics that you see on the screen. So why study abroad is a good thing. There's always some really common burning questions that students have about study abroad. So we're going to address those right at the outset with some quick facts about study abroad. Once you're ready to study abroad, there are 4 specific ways you can do it, like 4 categories of study abroad, and we'll cover those. That'll be the bulk of the presentation. Then we'll get into these other topics like housing considerations, eligibility, finding a program, putting together a budget to study abroad, what financial aid can you use, what scholarships are out there, and then we'll finish up with your next steps and what resources are available to you. Before I dig into this presentation, though, I think we should talk about COVID-19, right? Address the elephant in the room when it comes to study abroad. So you might know that we suspended study abroad for spring quarter, and then we suspended it again for summer quarter. So back in March, we evacuated the majority of our students who were studying abroad around the world. And we did that because it was recommended by the State Department and the CDC. And so almost all of our students came home. We got them home. And then we canceled study abroad for spring quarter and summer quarter, like I said. The State Department has a rating system for each country around the world, level 1 through 4. And we only send students to level 1 and 2 countries. Level 1 is exercise normal precautions. Level 2 is exercise increased caution. Until COVID-19 happened, an example of a level 1 country is Canada. An example of a level 2 country was France, because they had some terrorist activity over the last few years, you might remember in the news. That gives you an idea. Level 3, that's our tripwire to stop sending students to a country if they're level 3 or level 4. Level 3 is reconsidered travel, and level 4 is do not travel. So level 3 countries might be certain parts of Mexico that have high, narco trafficking violence. And level 4 would be do not travel. Those are countries like North Korea, Syria, and whatnot. So the US State Department, which is the agency that manages all of the American embassies and consulates around the world, put the entire world at level 4 because of the pandemic. And so that's why we brought people home, because of COVID-19 and how transmissible it is. So you're probably reading in the news that already countries are reopening. Europe has announced that they're going to open back up sometime midsummer and open their borders and even remove the 2-week quarantine requirement upon arrival. So we're starting to see that. And it could be that in the fall, we have a few students who go out and study abroad in the safest countries. And probably the majority of our students won't go. We normally send about 700 students abroad each year, and usually a few hundred go abroad in the fall quarter alone. I'm really expecting probably maybe 10 to 25 students to study abroad this fall, if any go at all. So we'll see. I don't want you to worry too much about that because most of you are freshmen. Some of you are transfer students, but most of you are entering freshmen. And to answer one of the questions that you guys submitted in advance, we actually don't let freshmen study abroad. You're allowed to study abroad if you're a new freshman the moment spring quarter ends. So next June, 2021, you could study abroad. And I bet you much more of the world will be open. There might be a vaccine. Countries may be managing COVID-19 better. And you have a year to plan, to budget, to apply for scholarships. You often need a year just to plan anyway. So hopefully that's going to be okay. So that's the elephant in the room. If you've got some follow-up questions, just go ahead and add them to the chat box, okay? So, all right. There are a lot of good reasons to study abroad. Oh, was that Hannah?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a question coming in from Tom. Is the limit based on their choices or the programs?
Is the limit, what do you mean? What do you think he means?
I was thinking about being a freshman maybe, and studying abroad as a freshman. And Tom, limit on travelers in terms of locations for COVID as it opens up, perhaps. So country-specific locations. I think it's referring to COVID locations. 25 out of 200 has to do with the numbers. So the numbers for fall.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. The reason why I think so few students will study abroad is because even though COVID-19, even though we're learning more about it and countries might open up, there's still no vaccine and treatment. There isn't even very successful treatment, although we learned a few weeks ago that there's been some early success with one of those antiviral drugs. So I'm bringing this up that even though countries are reopening, nothing's really changed with COVID-19. So a student could still get it this fall traveling in Italy or Germany or Chile or Australia or Japan. And they'd need to be willing to maybe self-isolate for a couple weeks if their symptoms are mild. Or they might be hospitalized in that country. And most students just don't even want to think about it. So what we're seeing is this major drop in applications for this fall. And so a number of our students who had already signed up for this fall have, in consultation with us, deferred their study abroad from this coming fall to next winter or spring quarter, or maybe spring semester if they're going to go to a semester university. So that's why we're seeing the big drop, is just because um, a lot of students just don't want to have to deal with the risk of that. And I totally understand. If I were to contract COVID-19, I'd probably want to contract it in my own country, where I have a support system. Something else too, a number of airlines are not serving every country still, and we don't know if they'll serve them in the fall. The other problem is that a number of countries have not reopened their borders, and they're requiring automatic quarantine, and students really don't want to get off a plane and go quarantine for 2 weeks in a country they don't know very well. The other problem that we have is twofold. The State Department in our own country has stopped processing passports in person, and they've got a backlog of many, many months. So our new problem is that students who didn't have a passport may not be able to get one in time to depart by late August or September. The second part of that problem is in reverse. We've closed our passport agencies in the US, but foreign countries have closed their embassies in the United States. And students have to apply for a student visa to get to another country and stay there as a student. And student visa applications take anywhere from 1 month to 3 months to process. And you apply for a visa through the embassy of your host country in the US. So if you were going to go study abroad in Spain, you would need to apply for a student visa through the Embassy of Spain or the Consulate of Spain in the United States that's assigned to Washington. And they're just not processing visas. That's the other problem why we may not be able to get students abroad this fall, and we're seeing such a big drop. So I hope that answers your question. So let's talk about the positive impacts of study abroad. Students and even my colleagues, after they've studied abroad, they tell me it was the best part of their undergraduate experience. It's just a lot of fun. It's also really transformational. And even though I think that's intuitive, you probably know it's a lot of fun and pretty special, pretty exciting, there's actually some research to support the benefits of study abroad. So we see when students study abroad and have an immersive intercultural experience in another country, they actually develop both their interpersonal skills, that left column there, and their interpersonal skills, the right column. And we see increased self-confidence, increased independence, curiosity, and adaptability. You might know, and it's not fair to say, but there's a characterization of Gen Z folks for not being super independent and having their life overscheduled for their childhood and whatnot. And we're noticing that, and we find that study abroad is one of those last frontiers where people can just go out and be themselves and have some adventures, gain some independence, gain some adaptability skills, just to really give them that space to grow in a way that maybe they haven't had a chance to grow in. On the interpersonal skills side on the right, we see an enhanced development of communication skills, leadership skills, teamwork, problem solving, taking initiative. And this all blends into employers really liking to see study abroad on a student's resume after they've graduated. And research shows that people who have studied abroad have an employment edge. So that middle column right there, where they find employment more quickly than their peers who didn't study abroad. And that their time to a job is shorter than for other students. So keep those things in mind. There's a number of really, really positive reasons to study abroad. So let's go over some quick facts. Now, back in the day, study abroad used to be called junior year abroad. You could only go as a junior and you went for a year. And that was a pretty tight, right? I mean, it didn't work for everybody. And a lot of people are intimidated about leaving that long. And I'll have students ask me, do I really have to study abroad for a whole year? No, not at all. You can go for as short as 1 or 2 weeks even. We've got programs that last a month, a quarter, a semester, because even though you'll be at a quarter university here at Western, um, most of the world is on the semester system. So maybe you'll go for a fall semester or a spring semester, which goes from January to May. If you did that, fall semester goes late August to December. Some students do the whole academic year, and you could do that too. You could go abroad for the summer. You could go abroad for an entire calendar year. There are sometimes study abroad programs over breaks like spring break or winter break. Really, you could probably find any combination that works well for you. So don't be intimidated about going for a year if that's not your thing. Having said that, if you can go for a year, I really encourage you to go for a year. Students who go for a shorter time often tell me that they wish they had gone for longer. They'll tell me like, I was really intimidated and I only signed up for the summer, and now like I wish I'd gone for the whole, semester or quarter or year. Because I mean, face it, you could probably guess that you'll fall in love with study abroad in your host country. So keep that in mind. When can you go? Anytime sophomore year, junior year, or senior year. It's no longer just junior year abroad. You can go anytime except freshman year. What we do have during freshman year is virtual exchange programs. And I'll show you the page on our website for what that means. But you could start doing some virtual experiences in year one if you wanted to. The other option for freshmen is if you have a strong, if you have a good rapport with one of your professors who's leading a study abroad program, we do allow freshman students to participate in a faculty-led program with special permission from the faculty member. If I were you though, I'd wait. I would get year one under your belt, figure out how being at a university works, what higher ed is like, and I'd say before you try to hold your own at a university in another country, you make sure you've got all your study skills developed and research skills and university skills before you study abroad. Students ask if they can use FAFSA, or federal financial aid. Yes, big yes. You can use a Pell Grant. That's what I used to study abroad when I was an undergrad. My mom was a single mom who didn't have a very high-paying job. She was a secretary, and this was my only way to get abroad, was to use my Pell Grant and my student loans. And I would definitely do it all over again. Cost ranges from low to high. Some students ask me, is study abroad expensive? Yeah, I mean, it can be expensive. It could also be more affordable too. There are expensive study abroad programs. Maybe you've heard of Semester at Sea. They're one of our approved study abroad providers, which we'll talk about. They're a great program, and they, you get to be on a ship and go from country to country, but they're expensive. They're like new car expensive. So, one semester with Semester at Sea is about $30,000. You could buy a nice new car for that. I'm in my 40s and I've never spent that much on a car, right? That's a lot of money. But like with cars, you could buy an affordable car, like a Saturn. So or a used car. So if Semester at Sea is like the Tesla of study abroad, there are also like the Saturn of study abroad, or the used cars of study abroad. The car gets you around. It's still nice enough. You'll still be happy. We've got programs for study abroad that are not Semester at Sea expensive. We've got programs that are closer to what you might even pay for a quarter at Western. And I'll tell you all about it. But I want you to know that there's a range. And if you don't want to break the bank and go into major debt to study abroad, you don't have to. There are ways. You may not be able to do semester at sea, but you could still get abroad. Cool? And then one more page of quick facts. Some students ask me if you've got to already speak a language to study abroad. You don't. We have a lot of programs in around the world in foreign language speaking countries where you do not need to speak the language before you go. In fact, in those programs, they'll offer a small selection of classes in English. It won't be as many as you'd see at a university in an English-speaking country, but enough to fill a schedule for a term or two or three. Those programs that are taught in foreign language speaking countries that have classes in English will also have classes for you to learn the host language at any level. Maybe you've taken 1 or 2 years of Spanish and you want to go to a Spanish speaking country, but you're not fluent yet. So maybe you can't take chemistry in Spanish, but you do want to take maybe second year Spanish. You could do that. So we see programs that have foreign language at every level for the language of the host country. So you might take 1, 2, or more classes to learn the language in a term, plus some classes in English, either about the host country or related to your major. If you wanted to avoid that, you could always go to an English-speaking country. Although one time I had a student ask me, Dr. Larsen, I really want to go to England, but I don't speak British. Can I still go? I was like, oh my God. So I told her no, she couldn't go. I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. Someone like her really has to study abroad. She needs to learn more about the world. So we do have that. We have a lot of programs in English-speaking countries. There are many English-speaking countries around the world, and you could just take whatever class was related to your major and minor because, you speak the language, and you'd be side by side with locals. If you're learning the language in a non-English speaking country, then you'd probably be side by side with other international students like you, maybe from other countries and from the US, but not locals because they don't need to learn their own language. They already know it. The next quick fact here is credit. Will you get credit for this? A lot of students ask me this, and even some of you asked me this question ahead of time when you signed up for this webinar. All of our programs are for credit. We don't let you go abroad to study abroad unless it's for credit and unless you're getting an official transcript from an accredited university. And frankly, they're not on our list for approved programs unless they're already an accredited university. All right, so you're going to get credit. But the big question is, will you get credit to go toward your degree program? So for example, maybe you're a Spanish major, but you go to France. And those classes you take in France will transfer back to Western for you. We'll help you with that part. That's what we do. But it's not like having French classes on your transcript will go toward a Spanish major, right? That could happen even at Western. You can just keep taking classes for years and not graduate unless you specifically take the classes that go toward your major and your minor, your degree, right? So that's where your academic advisor comes in. Hannah, Dan, Krista, the advisors on our staff can help you find course descriptions and syllabi for the courses you want to take abroad. So you can show them to your faculty advisor and say, hey, I saw that I need to take this world politics class for my major, and I found this class in Australia or in Japan or wherever called global politics. Here's the course description. Is that close enough to count toward my degree? And then your advisor will look at it and tell you yes or no. And that's kind of how the process works to make sure the credits that we get you on your transcript actually go toward one of your degree requirements. Now, here's just a quick word on that. You don't have to study your major or minor abroad. I encourage you to because it'll help you toward degree completion, and you absolutely can. But not everybody goes abroad for that reason. We've got students who go abroad because they want to do some heritage seeking, or they just always love that country, right? So maybe somebody like loves anime and manga, and they're obsessed with Japan, and they just want to go so bad, even though it has nothing to do with their major. They just want to go for personal growth. They can totally go and do that. I know they're going to work hard because Japanese universities are no joke, and they'll be busy. Or maybe a student, maybe her grandparents came from Italy, and she really wants to go to Italy, but she's a chemistry major. She doesn't speak Italian well enough to take chemistry in Italian. I could barely take chemistry in English. So I can imagine that chemistry in Italian would be pretty hard. She just wants to go to reconnect with her grandparents' heritage, to take some beginner Italian classes, maybe take some culture classes or cinema classes, Italian cuisine. She can absolutely do that. And you know what? She's going to get behind in her chemistry major. But I'd say to you that she's not going to get behind in life, right? That could be a very special, meaningful experience for her to reconnect with her heritage. And if that's what you want to do and that's your reasons for going abroad, we'll help you get there. But it does mean that chemistry major will probably need to make up some time. Maybe she'll take some summer classes in chemistry when she gets back to the US to catch up. Or maybe she'll go for a summer instead of a quarter or a semester to not interrupt her chemistry studies. Or maybe she'll just stay in school for 4 years and a quarter, and and for her, learning another language, you know, was, a good exchange, for getting a little bit behind. I'm just letting you know this to let you know that you can kind of do all the above: study your major, study your minor, take electives, take gen ed requirements, which are called GURs at Western, or study in a country just because you love the language. It might even be that you want to learn a language because it might help you in your career, right? Maybe you want to learn Spanish as an elementary school teacher to be, but you don't have a language requirement for the elementary education major, and you just want to learn Spanish so you can be more marketable when you're applying for jobs. So that's fine. Housing. Students ask us about this a lot too. Housing is an all of the above answer also. We have students who live in dorms on or near campus. We have students who will live in an apartment near campus, a shared apartment with other students. It might be that you live with a host family. Host families are a great way to integrate with the local culture and learn the language more quickly. And they know you're an adult, so it's not like a high school international exchange. You would be studying abroad as a university student, so there are no curfews or anything like that. It's more that you would be respectful. You've got your own room, so if you were out late, you'd come in quietly. And I think the host family experience is really special. They also cook for you and do your laundry. I kind of wish I had a host family right now. And then we even have camping as a form of housing, because we have our Huxley College of the Environment at Western. And we have a lot of environmental studies and environmental science students and so on studying abroad and doing field programs. And if that interests you, whether you're a Huxley student or not, we can hook you up. And then finally, full circle advising. Students will tell me like, it just seems too intimidating. It seems too big. If it feels really big right now, we're going to help make it small over time, okay? You can meet with one of our advisors or peer advisors as often as you want to ask questions, and we'll guide you and help you. You'll have 3 sessions with me where I train you to live in another country on your own before you leave. And then while you're away, we'll keep you connected to Western, which I'll tell you about in the next slide. And while you're abroad, you can email us and call us anytime that you need help. And then finally, when you get back, we have a number of programs for you to integrate back in the US and leverage your study abroad experience in the ways that you want, like how to incorporate study abroad into your resume so employers see it. How to go abroad again after graduation if maybe you want to go into the Peace Corps or apply for a Fulbright scholarship, or maybe do grad school abroad and so on, or work abroad. So we try to keep you connected. Hannah, do we have any questions that would be appropriate for right now?
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, and thanks for all these great questions coming through. I'm trying to answer them kind of real time, if possible, just to save time. There was a question about credits, and if it's, since most universities are on a semester system, what does that look like for quarter credits and going abroad that way?
That's a great question.
On that.
All right. Just so you know the formula, if you were to take one semester credit and multiply it by 1.5, what would, the product would be quarter credits, okay? So, basically one semester credit equals 1.5 quarter credits. So look, studying abroad in a semester world when you're from a quarter university is a little bit tricky. So let me explain. If you were to go abroad for fall semester somewhere, you'd probably leave late August or early September, and you'd come back mid-December. That's different from the quarter system in the sense that fall quarter tends to start the last week of September, so you'll start a month early. What's really good about studying abroad for fall semester is that you only miss fall quarter, and you earn more credits abroad than you would have gotten if you had just stayed at Western. The counterexample is if you were to go for spring semester, which starts mid to late January and goes to mid-May, you'd miss 2 quarters. 2 quarters is longer than 1 semester. 1 quarter is shorter than 1 semester, but 2 quarters is longer. So if you went abroad for spring semester, you'd miss winter quarter and you'd miss spring quarter, and you would earn fewer credits than you'd get if you had just stayed here. So we don't see a lot of students doing spring semester, although we do see a decent amount. We just see more students going abroad for the fall because it's more advantageous for you to be abroad for the fall because you'll get more credits. We do have partners abroad that offer single quarter programs where we could get you abroad just for winter quarter or just for spring quarter. It's not super common, but it's out there. So if you said to Hannah, if she was your advisor, I can only go abroad winter quarter, it's just the only time in my life this works with my family, with my work, whatever your reasons, then she will help you find a program that fits in just winter quarter from early January to late March. And while your options will go down, you'll still have some. And then if you wanted to avoid completely the whole semester versus quarter dynamic, just go abroad for summer. How's that, Hannah? Is there another question that I should tackle now?
Thanks, Ryan. I think we're doing well for the time being. So
great. All right, and that just means that Hannah knows I'm gonna probably answer your question if you've asked one, and she doesn't think we should address it right now. There's probably a slide on it. Just so you know, while you're away, we will enroll you in a block of placeholder credits to keep you tethered to Western. That way you don't need to reapply for admission. So if you decide that you're gonna go to Costa Rica for a semester, like fall of freshman year, we'll enroll you in 12 placeholder credits, at least. Actually, I think it's 15. And that doesn't generate tuition. It just generates a small fee of $325 instead of a couple $1,000s. And that allows us to keep you tethered to Western. You can keep on using the library resources from Western, all the online ones. If you're in Costa Rica and you need to write a paper, but you don't speak Spanish fluent enough to use their library, you could still connect with Western's library database and look up research articles in English and write your paper still for your English class in Costa Rica, just for an example. So this is our way to keep you tethered to Western and make sure you don't lose your admission status to Western. Now let's talk about the 4 ways to study abroad. I told you in the beginning of the presentation that there are 4 distinct ways to study abroad, and we're going to get into them now. The first way you can study abroad is through a provider. A provider is an organization that manages the study abroad experience for the student, just sets up everything. So I mentioned Semester at Sea earlier. Semester at Sea is an example of a study abroad program, a provider, excuse me. So study abroad providers right now are the most popular form of study abroad at Western. We have more students who do this than any other form of study abroad. You could go with any language level, from absolute zero, you don't speak the host language, to your intermediate or to your advanced or superior, and there will be classes for you. There are courses in English, even in foreign language speaking countries, and you would be usually with a cohort of American students. So you're kind of going through this experience together, but they'd be from all over the United States. The provider organization might be for-profit or nonprofit. We notice that the nonprofit ones charge less, generally speaking. They arrange everything for you. Everything from getting you the letters that you need from the host universities in order to apply for your visa, to arranging housing for you before you arrive, so you show up and your housing is all taken care of, instead of you showing up and having to figure out how to find an apartment or a room to rent. So that's nice. They arrange excursions and field trips for you. They'll take you on tours to the country next door maybe, or to other parts of the country. They hire the professors locally to teach in English, if it's a foreign language speaking country. And they have staff on site to support you with anything that you need. I'm going to give you an example real quick. So I'm going to open up my browser, and I'm going to type in study abroad, but it's already here. So if you were to just Google www study abroad because you forgot we were called the Education Abroad Office, this will be the first page that pops up. This is our website, and I'm going to click on Get Started. And look at this, 4 ways to study abroad. If you went to the Study Abroad Provider option, then you'll see on this page what that means and who are the approved providers. These are organizations that we have vetted, reviewed, evaluated to make sure that they have good health, safety, and security practices, good academic integrity, good student services, and a good variety of options for students, right? If I only approve providers with field-based programs out in the field and camping, that doesn't meet everybody's needs. So instead, what we've done is we've curated a list for you of as many experience types as we could think of, right? Everything from semester at sea, to doing internships abroad, to doing field studies, and then most of the rest of them are the traditional in the classroom programs. So let's go back to the presentation. I'm going to do another slide before we go for questions. Let's talk about exchanges now. Exchanges are the second type of study abroad. It's the second type of study abroad that you could undertake. By exchange, I mean that in the old school sense of the word, where you and an international student trade places. Don't worry, they're not going to move into your apartment or anything like that. I don't mean that. But I mean that over a few years, Western and whatever partner university of ours that you pick to go to agrees to send and receive an equal amount of students. So if over a year or two, we've sent 5 students to our partner university in Australia, then they need to send us 5. And if we've sent them more than they've sent us, then we cool things down for a bit until a couple more students come from Australia, and then we restart the exchange again. Exchange is the #1 most affordable way to study abroad, because we charge you a rate that's very close to in-state tuition at Western, even if you're an out-of-state student. Did you hear that part? Even if you're an out-of-state student, we'll still charge you a rate that's pegged to in-state tuition. But since all of our exchange partners are semester universities, we charge you 1.25 of in-state tuition, even if you're out of state. And 1.25 ends up being about a semester. So you might think, well, if this is the cheapest option, why isn't exchange the most popular instead of provider? Providers are more expensive than exchange. There are some affordable ones, but there's some really expensive ones too. The reason why exchange is not as popular, even though it's cheaper, is because it's a super independent experience. You're basically directly enrolling in an international university somewhere out in the world. And there's no provider there to kind of do the hand holding. They don't set up housing for you. They don't take you on a bunch of field trips. You can go on field trips if the university is offering field trips at the International Student Office, and they do. But the level of service is really different. With providers, you're paying for everything, and they give you everything. With exchanges, you're living your life there at this host university like you would at Western. If you get a cold, you'd walk to the student health center at Western, right? If you were on a provider program and you got a cold, they would pick you up and take you to the clinic and translate for you at the doctor's office. If you're on an exchange, it would be like Western. You'd walk to the clinic and maybe you've written down in the host language your symptoms because you might not remember them in the host language. And then you do your best at the doctor and try to muddle through that appointment to get the medication you need, by writing down your symptoms in the host language and hoping for the best, I'm afraid. And if my statement just now kind of makes you anxious, it could be that exchange maybe isn't the right thing for you. So exchange is an option to consider, but it requires a lot of independence. It's got to be, I think a good student for exchange is somebody that doesn't panic easily. When the going gets tough, they're like, okay, I'm not feeling well. What did they tell me at orientation about the clinic? Let me go look through my orientation materials. Okay, I'm gonna write down my symptoms in French, and then I'm gonna just go. So, just somebody who kind of stays calm. If you were more like me when I was a student and I was quick to be anxious, then maybe a provider program is a better fit for you. I'm talking really slow, and we're already 50 minutes in, so I'm going to jump to the third type of study abroad, which is called global learning programs. Global learning programs are what we call our faculty-led programs. This is probably pretty intuitive for you. This is when a Western Washington University professor leads a study abroad program with a cohort of about 10 to 15 students. They tend to be shorter, anywhere from about 1 week to 6 weeks. And I'd say the average is 3 weeks for the majority of our global learning programs. You can see some examples on the screen here on the right-hand side. For example, a professor of French in the Modern and Classical Language department every other summer takes a group of students to Montreal, and she teaches third-year French classes to her cohort at a university in Montreal. And you just live there for a month, and she knows Montreal like the back of her hand and takes you guys to all the best places, and you pay Western tuition for that plus whatever program fee is required to pay for all of the expenses. This food in Italy course, business and food cultures in Italy, is super popular. You basically are getting credit to learn about eco-gastronomy in Italy, and it's amazing. There are two art professors who take students to Japan for about 3 weeks, and they learn all about the art and art history of Japan. So they're really cool programs. They tend to be more expensive than you'd probably expect, only because only 10 to 15 students go on them, and we just charge what it costs to run the program. If it was a program with 100 students, then it wouldn't cost as much. These are such small programs that they tend to be a little bit pricey. So you might look at the budget, a year in advance and just see like, okay, what do I need to save up to do something like this? And the list of global learning programs is also on the website under the Get Started types of programs menu that I showed you. And then the last type of study abroad that you could do is what we call practical learning abroad. This is for students who want to do an internship abroad for credit to bolster their resume and to get some professional experience before they graduate. This could be a student who's doing the TESOL minor or certificate. TESOL is for teaching English abroad or in the States, but maybe you're doing your TESOL practicum abroad. Maybe you're an education major and you want to do your student teaching abroad. You can do that. We would help you. So this could be independent research while you're abroad for an independent study project that you're doing with a professor. So we do have students do this. It's not as common as the other forms of study abroad, but we've got it. And so that's something to keep in mind. And I know we're running out of time. Was there anything about these 4 categories of study abroad I should address before moving on?
Thanks, Ryan. I think we're good. Like I said, if you guys have questions, put them in the chat and I'll answer them real time. And then that way Ryan can get through as many slides as possible.
Great. To study abroad, you need to have at least a 2.5 GPA, and that's to get through our office. But then you'd have to also meet the GPA requirement of the host university. And that could be higher. It could be 2.75 or 3.0, or maybe a little bit higher than that. But usually it's no higher than 3.0 with some exceptions. I already told you about sophomore status. We don't count running start towards sophomore status. Don't get too mad at me, you guys. But basically, study abroad is such an intense experience, even when it goes well, that we just need you to have a year under your belt of taking classes at a university, being, away from parents for a year, living an independent life before we send you to live in another country on your own. Student conduct history may be a factor, so don't get in too much trouble, okay? We do check that, but we're only really screening for violent behavior. If you get in a little bit of trouble, then that's okay. But if it's in big trouble, that's more of a problem. When you're thinking about your budget, I want you to kind of think big picture. I've been speaking more about tuition and program fees, but you have to also think, what will it cost to fly? Their round trip. Is the cost of living higher there than here? If I go to Norway, cost of living might be higher. That's a really wealthy country. If I go to Peru, cost of living is much lower. That might even be a better fit for me in my budget. In fact, I knew I wanted to study Spanish so I could become fluent in it, but I couldn't afford to go to Spain because at the time, the currency was called the peseta. It was before the euro, and it was more than I could afford. The exchange rate was pretty equal. So I went to Costa Rica for a year, which was a really nice place, and the exchange rate was much more favorable for me. And that meant that the little money I had went much, much further. And so I could kind of do some weekend trips as I was taking classes at the university in Costa Rica where I was. I could stay longer, and I stayed for a year. If I had gone to Spain, I probably would have had to go for a shorter time. So you can be strategic too. Where is your money going to go further? You might have noticed already, if you're not from Bellingham, that the housing market is tight. So this slide is basically about thinking, what am I going to do with my housing while I'm gone? If it's a short enough time, should I just sublet it or save up enough money to pay for rent for a month, even though I'm away? Because it would be too hard to, find a new apartment if I'm only gone for a month. If you're gone for a year, then maybe you plan it that you depart right when your lease is ending. You just kind of need to think about it. And these resources are on here. And by the way, we'll send out this presentation afterward in the recording if you want to reference some of these pages. And we have it on our website. I do want to spend some time talking about financial aid in our last few minutes. You can use anything that you get from FAFSA and apply it towards studying abroad with only a couple exceptions. But with regard to FAFSA, you can use the Pell Grant, you can use student loans, you can use the Parent Plus loan. And in fact, we'll tell the financial aid office if you need more money than normal to meet your educational expenses. Meeting your educational expenses is called cost of attendance in the financial aid world. So we tell the financial aid office, her cost of attendance is this much more if she were to study abroad. They might be able to increase your loans, but not your grants. Grants are fixed amounts based on your parents' income, for the most part, if you're not independent. Loans, though, are adjustable based on how much money you need. So you might get more money in financial aid. With regard to FAFSA, though, the one thing that is tricky to use would be work study. That's when FAFSA gives you money to have a job on campus. But you wouldn't be on campus. You would be leaving Western. And so you wouldn't be able to do your work study while you're abroad. There are other items on there, but you can read them later. There are many, many scholarships out there that you could apply for, and all the advising staff will help you with scholarship coaching if you'd like it. We'll coach you on your essays. There's a writing center on campus. I don't want you to think that you have to have a 4.0 to get a scholarship. We have a lot of students from in the 2.5 to 3.0 range that get scholarships too. And the money is out there. And in fact, look at this. Our students were awarded over $275,000 last year. And trust me, they were not all 4.0 students. So I don't want you to think that you shouldn't apply for scholarships if you're not straight A student. Even some of our students with a B average got scholarships. The last thing I want to share with you is how to find a program. So if we're going to go back, just even though these are linked, I'm just going to show you on our website. So remember I said you could Google WW Study Abroad. This will get you to our page. If you go to Get Started again, right here, these are the 4 ways to study abroad, and then these are the ways to find a program. One way that I really want you to know about that Hannah has spent an insane amount of time on are these major advising pages. We don't have them for every major on campus, but we're getting close, only because it takes so much time, because Hannah has to work with that department's faculty advisors and academic advisors to create these for you. So say there's somebody in the room who is a political science major. Hannah has identified study abroad programs that offer a meaningful amount of political science courses, just to give an example. So if one of you said to me, I know I want to study abroad in Asia, and I'm specifically thinking about Japan, and I'm a political science major. Hannah's already done the legwork for you and identified programs in Japan that offer political science. And so she's identified this one, Akita International University in Japan. Now, another way that you can look for programs is by cost effectiveness. So I'm back on this major advising page. Hannah has put together a resource called Cost Effective Programs, where she's found study abroad programs that are under $10,000 with tuition, fees, and housing combined. In the study abroad world, if you can study abroad for $10,000 for a semester, so there are programs that are less than that, but just for a semester to just have a target, If you can find a program less than 10K for housing, tuition, and fees combined, then it's considered cost effective in our work. So it's same idea. You might say, oh, I really want to go to Europe. I know it's so expensive, but it's where I want to go. I don't want to go anywhere else. And I specifically want to go to, I don't know, Sweden. So you could go down to Sweden, and Hannah has here 5 programs where you could go abroad for a semester, meaning it might be less if you went for a shorter amount of time, less than 10K, and then you could look at these. And then finally, we also, on that Get Started page, we have a program discovery page, which is a search tool kind of like Google. Then we have an advanced search, and that would be a little bit more surgical, where you're looking for programs and you're typing in, you know, the exact term you want to go, the exact country with the exact major, it just allows you to choose the variables. All right, so let's go back to this and finish up because now we're late. Okay, the next steps for you would be sometime this fall or even this summer, maybe going to our contacts page on our website and requesting a meeting with an advisor. So if you go to About and you click on Directory, you'll see our staff here. And here's Hannah over here. And here's me, but they don't let me see students. I guess they're just like, you have to do budgets, Ryan, and talk to deans. So if you want to meet with an advisor, Dan advises for exchanges, Hannah advises for providers and faculty-led, and Krista advises for the independent experiences, the practical experiences abroad, like internships and whatnot. And she can back up advise for some of the other experiences too. So this concludes our presentation. Why don't we take questions? I know that many of you have to go, but any final questions, Hannah, that we could answer?
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for all of your questions. We did have some questions kind of about the best time to go abroad, if students can go abroad to multiple countries. Let's say they wanted to do a semester in one country and then another semester in another, something like that.
Okay. I know that a lot of you have to go, so please feel free to go since we were supposed to end at 4. I guess I'm too talkative. Sorry about that. All right. I would say the best time to go abroad would be sometime during sophomore year. The reason why is because when you're a sophomore, you have a lot of flexibility in your academic schedule. You could take pre-major classes, you could take minor classes, major classes, you could take gen eds called GURs at Western. If you were to wait to go until you were a senior, you are just taking your upper division major classes at that point, and you have less flexibility. You can absolutely go as a senior, but you might go to Hannah and say, Hannah, it's my senior year, I want to go abroad, and all I need are these 4 courses and nothing else. Hannah might be able to help you find those 4 courses, but she might not. It just might be the wrong combination. So you might kind of get a little bit behind that term. Whereas if you're a sophomore and to a certain extent a junior, you might say to Hannah, Hannah, I need any of these 10 classes for that term. And then you might take 4 or 5 out of those 10 and even have some backup classes if one of them doesn't work out. That's why I think sophomore year is probably the best year to study abroad, followed by junior year. You can absolutely go as a senior, and it really works out for seniors when they've left a lot of their electives open. Even if they're upper division major electives, they still have flexibility. I hope that helps. Another question, Hannah?
We had students asking about the WUI and if they can use the WUI for study abroad and what that kind of looks like financially.
Sure. WUI, for those of you who don't know, stands for Western Undergraduate Exchange. That is That is a program, an agreement that the states in the Western United States have made with each other, primarily the West Coast states with the few Mountain West states. So say you're from Nevada and you want to come to Washington, instead of charging you out-of-state tuition, they charge you something in between out-of-state and in-state tuition. It's not as cheap as in-state, but it's cheaper than out-of-state. The problem with the WUI is it's not a scholarship. What I mean to say is they call it that, but they do not give you cash. What they do is they discount the tuition. So they don't give you money to pay tuition. They just charge you a lower rate in the first place. And we can't transfer a discount from Western Washington University to an international university. You usually just pay that rate. If you did a faculty-led program, the faculty-led programs are self-supporting programs, which means we have to charge enough money in order to pay the professor's salary, to pay for everybody's hotel and lodging, to pay for people's group meals, to pay for excursions and transportation and all of that. And we're not allowed to use discounts on those programs either, because if we had like 5 WUI students, then what would happen is we wouldn't have enough money to pay for everybody's lodging. So long story short, you cannot use WUI to study abroad. However, if you did exchange, your fees would be lower than WUI. So you'd pay less that semester going on exchange because we charge you in-state tuition, which is cheaper than the WUI discount. Any other questions, Hannah?
We had questions about FAFSA and study abroad and how how you can access loans to cover the difference. Let's say if for flights and things like that, if your program ends up costing more than what you pay at Western.
Great question. So that's a callback to the cost of attendance concept that I was telling you about earlier. So say Hannah was your advisor. She would inform the financial aid office that the tuition at your host university is this much money, and the program fee is that much money, and the round trip airfare is that much, and renting a flat in Lyon, France is this much, and the food budget is that much, and the cost of getting insurance is this much. And then she'll say, this cost of attendance financial aid office for this student is higher than if they just stayed here. And that's when, so the financial aid office uses that information from Hannah to adjust your loans to award you more money if you're eligible. And most students are, if they have more expenses than normal. And that's how you end up with more money if you want it. If you have to take out a lot of loan money to study abroad, I'd encourage you to think of more cost-effective countries where your dollar goes further. Kind of like how I was saying, I went to Costa Rica instead of Spain, which is a really lovely country, neutral country like Switzerland, no military, you know, it was a lovely place and I had a great time. And it saved me maybe 50% of what I would have had to have spent going to Spain. Any other questions, Hannah, or shall we end here?
I think we're good. I put my email and my Calendly information. Great. So if anyone wants to reach out and has more specific questions, we are more than happy to help you. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here, too. If you go to that contact page on our website, you'll see everybody's link on the staff to request an appointment. You'll also see some peer advisors at the bottom of that page, right after the staff. Those are other Western students just like you who have already studied abroad that work for us. And if you'd prefer to start with them to ask them questions, they love talking about their study abroad experience and helping other students. So thanks a lot, everyone. And sorry for going a bit late. And take care. I hope to see you soon when we're allowed to see each other again. Bye, everyone. Bye, Hannah.
Bye.